Okay, good evening. This is the Human Relations Committee regular meeting of December 12th, 2019. We'll ask Mary Constantino to take the roll, please.
Chair Kralik,
Present.
Commissioner Lee,
Present.
Commissioner Regier,
Present.
Commissioner Savage,
Present.
Commissioner Smith, Commissioner Stinger, Councilmember Koo.
Here.
Well, welcome. We'll first start with agenda changes, requests, and deletions. Not hearing any. Are there any oral communications? No cards have been filled out, so we'll begin with the business of tonight, which is the report on Community Service Department inclusionary programming by Kristen O'Kane. And before we do that, we do have Commissioner Stinger with us, so we'll just pause for a moment while she situates herself. Good evening, Commissioner Stinger. Kristen, if it's possible, could you introduce yourself and your role in the city and tell us how you got to put together this presentation? We appreciate your presence tonight.
Sure. So Kristen O'Kane, I'm the director of the Community Services Department, and I know there has been some interest in what sort of inclusion and accessibility programming that we do in the Community Services Department, and I've had some communications with Commissioner Lee and Commissioner Regier. I always struggle with that one. And I've shared some information with them, but they did request that I come and share it with the full commission, so that's why I'm here. So I'm just going to provide some information on what we currently do and what we're working on now, and also status of some proposed capital improvement projects that we have proposed for our next fiscal year.
And just so everybody knows who's watching, what is inclusionary programming? What does that mean?
Well, inclusionary programming, it's a lot of cities refer to it as therapeutic recreation programs, so it's just ensuring that we're providing programs and services for anybody in the community, regardless of who they are, of what sort of abilities or disabilities they have, and that all of our programs and services are provided for everyone.
Okay, thank you.
Mm-hmm. Okay, so I'm going to go through, so the Community Services Department, I'll give a little bit of background on how we're structured. So we have a Parks, Open Space, and Golf division. We have a Recreation division, and then we have Arts and Sciences. And then we also have the Office of Human Services. So our Arts and Sciences includes the Children's Theater. It includes a community theater as well as, or two community theaters actually. And then our arts includes public art as well as our art center, and also the Junior Museum and Zoo is in that division. And then recreation is obviously all our camps and classes that we provide for children and adults.
And just for my edification, Abigail was a star at one of the children's presentations. It was
Wonderful.
a musical. A couple years ago, she was in Oompa Loompa and Charlie and the Chocolate Factory. But when you say you have that division, how do you, is it oversight of those groups, or the employees at the theater part of the city? How does that work?
So the Children's Theater is a city facility, and it's a city-run program. So it is staffed by city staff, some full-time, some part-time, and then there's also some contract staff as well. But it is a completely run city program.
It's unbelievably powerful for the kids, and the experience that our children have both had there have been just tremendous. So that's great. That's great to hear. And so how is it that you oversee that? What is it that you look at when you do that?
Well, I'm the director of the department, and so there's typically two assistant directors in our department. They're both vacant right now, and hopefully will be filled in the next few months. But so we typically have two assistant directors and there's managers under them who oversee all of those programs.
Okay, that's wonderful. Okay, I'm sorry, just trying to
That's
get a
okay. Sure.
little context.
And it's the same for the Art Center, it's the same for the Junior Museum and Zoo for recreation. So it's,
Right.
the typical structure of
They're
an
fantastic
organization.
resources. They're wonderful.
They really are, and the community is very fortunate to have all of these programs. Okay, so the Children's Theater has, so like all of our programs, the Children's Theater has programs and camps that are accessible to any participant. So we won't turn anybody away, regardless of who they are. And this past year, or past couple years, we've started providing sensory-friendly performances. So they're quieter, they're not as bright, and then we also have sensory prep lists of cues that can prepare parents or caretakers and help their kids be prepared if there are loud noises or bright lights in a performance. And then we also have sensory-friendly classes and camps. This is an example here, and if you can't see it very well, I can pull it up online. That's part of what we're calling the Magical series because they're done in collaboration with the Magical Bridge Playground. So this is an example of a class that's called story acting, but it is part of our spectrum-friendly programming. So it will provide a description of, I can't see it over there, so I have to turn it around. So on it, it has a description of what ages and also what developmental age range it's designed for, and also for, in this case, it's for individuals who can work on a 5-to-1 ratio. People are also welcome to bring aides, and we're happy to work with aides on ensuring the best experience for all of our participants. So next is recreation. So again, everything's accessible to anyone who wants to participate. So for example, we have our teen center at Mitchell Park Community Center, and any teen who meets a certain age range is welcome to attend the teen center. We also work with aides that are provided by the participant to ensure participants have the best experience. So we will have conversations with them, we communicate with them, we like to know in advance that aides are coming just so we can be prepared and again ensure that the participants are having the best experience that they can. This past summer, we piloted a new summer camp, again, partnering with the Magical Bridge Foundation and the Palo Alto Recreation Foundation to provide a camp at Mitchell Park for individuals with a cognitive functioning level under the age of 5. And we had 8 participants in that camp this year, and we're still working with the Magical Bridge Foundation to see if we'll continue this camp or, make any adjustments that we might need to. And then you probably are aware of the Omega Club, and Mary could probably speak more to that than I can, but it is an activity club for adults with special needs, ages 21 and over. So the Palo Alto Art Center and the Junior Museum and Zoo do a lot together, so I've combined them in this slide, and they have calm down kits, weighted blankets, noise canceling headphones available at their facilities for those who might need it. And in addition to that, a visual emotion guide. So for students who are nonverbal, it helps them communicate how they're feeling, why they might be upset at a particular time. They also have conversation protocols. So if unexpectedly a participant shows up with an aid, it just helps the instructors have the conversation, ask the right questions. And one of the other things they've done is, so the Palo Alto Art Center and the Junior Museum and Zoo benefit from a lot of volunteer hours. And they have worked with the school district to place teens with developmental disabilities in the volunteer program so they can gain valuable work experience. So the JMZ exhibits now, right now it's just the museum because they're relocated at Coverly, but they're designed to be accessible to visitors with physical and developmental disabilities. And as they're designing the new Junior Museum and Zoo, they've actually received grant funding to ensure that they're even more accessible to anybody. The JMZ also hosts Super Family Sundays, which are the zoo, museum and zoo is only open to families with children who have special needs. And it just, we have a lot of staff on hand at those times. We bring the animals out so they can have the, touch experience with the animals. And it's a very popular event. Those are about every other month, but can vary depending on the season. And then I wanted to pull up this website. If this works. So the Junior Museum and Zoo actually has a whole page on accessibility.
Now, the Junior Museum, while you're doing that, it's going through this huge change,
It is.
right? I mean, it's like a brand-new facility, and it's been funded to the tune of millions of dollars. Is that right? Is it,
Sorry, I'm having technical difficulties. It's okay. I don't know why the link isn't showing up on the screen.
Oh,
It's okay. So I can pull it up afterwards if you'd like
Sure.
to see it, but the JMZ has a page just on accessibility. But yes, the JMZ is going under a huge rebuild.
they just tore it down and built a whole new
They
JMZ,
did.
right?
Yeah, and it's going to be absolutely amazing and incredible, and it should be open in October of next year.
Wow, okay.
Yeah. So that's what we currently do, sort of an overview. Sorry, I'm on, Mary?
I have the little thing there, do you see? Clicker? This one?
But it's different on here.
Oh. Oops. Maybe get out of it and start again.
Here, I'm going to do that. There. Okay, sorry about that. So when I became director this past year, one of the things that was really important to me was to look at what we were doing in the department and also improve and expand on that where we can. And it's not something that we'll necessarily be able to do instantly, but over time. So to start that, and as you noticed from the presentation, each program area does things a little bit different. Some provide more things than others or just different things. And so what we did is create a work group within the department that has representatives from each of the different program areas and facilities. And it's really a way for them to share and learn best practices, what works, what hasn't worked, just to maintain consistency across the department so that when a family or an individual comes, they have the same experience no matter which camp or class they take and who they're communicating with. And also just looking ahead on ways we can improve. So, and they're meeting roughly every other week, and it's, the staff were really excited and happy that this was coming forward, because sometimes, we want to do the right thing and we might not even know what that is or how we can do better. You don't know what you don't know. So it's really been helpful to get everyone in the same room. So there was last summer an intern in the Human Services Office who did a lot of interviews and benchmarking with other cities and to determine what are other people doing with respect to therapeutic recreation. And so we do have that information that we refer to often to see, what ratios people are providing. Do people have specific inclusion policy statements? Are people providing aids? Or, there were a lot of different questions that were asked and provided a lot of good information. We've also provided and will continue to provide staff trainings on inclusion and diversity. So this is something that's continuing and it's been very helpful. for staff just to understand what is the proper language to use. What should we be asking, what shouldn't we be asking, things like that. We're also expanding the Magical series to all other CSD program areas. So like I said, when someone goes into our Enjoy catalog and they'll see Magical series and they'll know that that's something that either will be for individuals with developmental disabilities or physical disabilities, but and then when they go online, they can even search Magical and those will come up. Right now, we just have one, but we are looking at how we can expand into this summer. And then we're also evaluating the addition of a staff person who would be a therapeutic recreation specialist. That is in the early evaluation phase. I mean, we would need to get all the approvals to do that, and we're looking at, should this be a part-time person, a full-time person? We're not sure, but it would be really nice to have one point person within our department that families can talk to, that is trained and an expert in this field. Some other cities do have those positions, and those are the people that we're looking to for training and for advice. And then finally, we've updated the text in our Enjoy catalog on access and inclusion, and this is just sort of our statement saying that all abilities are welcomed, and asking people if they or their child requires reasonable modifications in order to participate in a class, camp, or workshop to please let us know in advance, and we will do our best to meet their needs. We also have a fee reduction program for individuals who might need help with the cost of paying for class and camp registrations. So all this before was buried a little bit in our, when you'd go on to register for a class, it was buried a little bit, but now we've moved it up front so that people see it right away.
I was wondering if you could just elaborate on what the city means by, reasonable modifications. What does that mean? Does it have a specific meaning? What does the city have?
Well, reasonable modifications is an ADA term. So we often hear people say reasonable accommodation, and that's actually not, that's employer-employee relationship. So reasonable modification in what's in, I believe it's Title II of the Americans with Disabilities Act. And the definition is in there, which I don't know off the top of my head. So,
does the city have any additional modifications above and beyond sort of what's required by Title II, or is that part of sort of this ongoing process?
I think it's more a case-by-case basis. I mean, every situation is different. Every person is different, and so we need to evaluate each request based on what it is and what the class is and what we can provide.
Are there recent examples where the department has been able to go above and beyond in particular cases, beyond what's
So in the children's theater, I want to say it was last summer, I believe they did provide aids. If people needed aids, the children's theater provided aids. That is
That's great.
above and beyond,
Yeah.
and it is not something that we currently do in all of our programs. Most cities do not provide aids.
And that brings down the ratio, right, of students, kids to sort of adults, I guess, right? Having the aids brings down that ratio.
So if it was like a 5-to-1, then you could have 6, do you mean? It's possibly.
I mean, are we talking about like 1-to-1 ratio here, or 1-to-2? Or?
For the aids?
Yeah, when you bring in the
It's
aids.
1-to-1.
Oh, 1-to-1,
Yeah,
okay.
I see.
Okay. Gotcha. So are we asking questions during the thing, or are we trying to wait until the end?
I was terrible. Actually started, and I was just trying to make you feel comfortable.
Okay, then I'll
okay.
wait, then I'll wait.
Thank
then I'll
you.
wait.
Yeah, I didn't want to, I just wanted to kind of give you an introduction and
Sure,
get you
that's
going.
great, thank you. But actually, I'm at the end of this part, and then I'm going to go into the capital
Great.
project.
Yeah,
So
sure.
if you would like to pause here for questions on the programming
Okay,
piece,
does anyone
I think
have
that makes
questions?
sense.
Patty, go right ahead.
My only question is is on the junior museum, since it used to be free. Can you talk about the pay schedule, like what you're doing for people that are low income, like how that, is that established, like how that's going to work yet?
So we're working on that. It hasn't been established. We're putting together different scenarios of what it would look like. So we don't know yet where it will go to our finance committee in February, the first meeting in February, which is, I think, the 4th. But again, we're going to present different options for the finance committee to weigh in on.
I was wondering if you could just elaborate a little bit more on the aids that were provided at the Children's Theater. I think that's a fantastic service, definitely above and beyond what's legally required. And so, I want to thank you for doing that. But could you help us understand how that particular initiative came about? Did it require sort of reprogramming of some funds? What were some of the lessons learned? How might we explore, or maybe you're already exploring, how might we explore doing something similar in other program areas?
So I don't know the specifics. I will definitely talk to the staff who planned that camp and get back to you, but I don't have the specifics right now.
I was wondering if you could speak to what the current ratios are for the programming, because I know in particular, one of the issues that I've heard from parents with special needs kids is that it's difficult for them to access the programs because of the ratios, and if they're unable to bring their own aid, then often that's sort of the impediment, and obviously providing additional aids to bring down the ratio is labor intensive, right? You either need to hire additional people, or in the cases of some other cities in the area, have a huge volunteer reserve to do that. So I'm wondering, what are the current ratios, and is that, as the topic of ratios, one of the topics that your working group is kind of throwing around? And
So right now, the ratios vary greatly, and it is something that the group is talking about, and again, benchmarking other agencies, including schools, on what ratios are. I will say that for example, our summer camps, if we know that a child is coming without an aid, while we don't have necessarily aids to provide, we can bring in additional staff just to provide more attention to that one child. That's why it's really helpful to us when we know in advance that someone might be coming who needs additional help or services from us, so we can definitely make those accommodations. But right now, the ratios really vary depending on the ages, what type of class it is. If it's, something where it's a music class and it's more sort of free play versus an art class or a ceramics class, then the ratios would be much lower.
Okay, so are there any other questions? We could then
Well,
move on.
sorry,
You have
I
another
have
one?
one small one. So
Okay.
I know that you have a very passionate group of employees who are working through this working group every other week. That's fantastic. And I want to thank you and that team for doing that. Is there a particular time frame in which sort of the first round of either recommendations or things that you want to share across the department needs to happen by? Is there a particular time frame for those initial sets of, I don't know what you call them, objectives or goals or action items?
I mean, not really, because we're driving this ourselves. The only thing I will say is that if we're proposing something new that requires additional funding, then we would need to meet our budget timelines,
Which is sort of now.
which
right?
is
Yeah.
pretty much, now, or coming up very soon for our operating budget. So, but otherwise, they are really eager to have more things in place. Like I said, to be consistent across the department. The staff want to do what's right, and sometimes they don't even know what that is. It's it's really important that we equip our staff so that they can be successful as well. So they're eager to do it, and things will happen over a period of time.
And are you going to be able to make sort of the budget deadline for the recreation specialists that you're thinking about? I mean, I know the format isn't determined yet, but do you anticipate being able to meet the current budget?
I think so.
Cycle.
We'll definitely try to propose something, but what that is, we're not quite sure.
Okay, great, thank you.
Councilmember Koo, I'm sorry, we didn't ask if you'd like to ask a question.
No, thank you. Thank you for
Okay,
asking.
Sure. All right, go right
Okay.
ahead, please.
Okay, so now I'm going to switch gears and talk a little bit about what we're proposing in the 2021 capital improvement plan. There's two projects. The first one is the Rinconada Pool Family Changing Room. So this project would reconfigure an existing space that's there and turn it into either one or two, we're not sure yet because we're not sure what the space can accommodate. ADA accessible, gender neutral restroom and family changing facility, which would include shower, toilet, sink, child and adult changing tables, and obviously a bench or, chairs to sit on. So that's been submitted, and we're hopeful that that will go through. And the other one, the Magical Bridge Playground, we are submitting a proposal to resurface the playground. So, it's sort of the squishy, all-weather material. It's because the Magical Bridge Playground gets so many visitors, more than we ever could have anticipated, which is wonderful. It's there's been more wear and tear than we expected, to the point where we feel that resurfacing it instead of trying to keep, doing patch repairs on it would be more beneficial. The other one that I don't have here because it's being proposed by Public Works and not my department is the Rinconada Park. So that's the park next to the Junior Museum and Zoo. Right now, there's two playgrounds. There's the younger one over by the tennis courts, and then the older kids' playground, which is by the Girl Scout house and the museum. As part of the JMZ construction, there's a need to do some reconfiguring of the pathways. And as part of that, what we're proposing is to take the two playgrounds, combine them into one, because we know that if you have a 2-year-old and an 8-year-old, you can't be in two places at one time, but you need to be watching them both. And so it would combine them both, and it would rebuild it with elements like they have at the Magical Bridge Playground. So that would also be a more inclusive playground than what we have now.
Do you know how much that one?
The cost?
Yeah.
I don't. I can get that information to you as well. So that requires a park improvement ordinance that has already gone to the Parks and Rec Commission, and they're recommending that council approves that, and that is coming up in the next couple of months, and I can provide that date to you as well.
So they endorsed that?
The Parks and Rec Commission
great,
did,
great,
absolutely,
okay.
yeah.
I just have one question about that, because I know in one of the schools, when they did it, there was a lawsuit because a younger kid went on an older, and now they have to have a person guarding or saying with a big sign, only children over a certain age can be on this, and actually a staff person's supposed to be there and watching it. And so are you going to
Well, we do have signs at our playgrounds that say what age is there for, and they're still going to be separate, but it
Right.
allows the parent to watch. And there's actually going to be an adult exercise area there as well.
Oh,
Yeah.
So I know when the three of us had met, you had explained that the CIP process, the city does it in sort of 5-year schedules. So for these, I guess, 3 items, do you happen to know when in the next 5 years it would be done? Is it 2021 or is it?
So it's a 5-year CIP, and that's really a way for us to forecast and look ahead into the future. What council will be adopting is fiscal year 21 only,
Yeah.
because
Okay.
they can't approve expenditure of funds in future years. So these are all planned for fiscal year
Great.
21. And then I did include a slide on just what our CIP process is. So we're sort of here where this star is right now, where our projects have been submitted to the Office of Management and Budget. They then go to a general fund review committee, and before it gets to the city manager, there's a lot of back and forth with staff. So we will meet with them. We'll have the opportunity to explain why these certain programs and projects that we're submitting are important. And then they'll go to the city manager for review and approval. And then the Planning and Transportation Committee reviews them for compliance with our comprehensive plan. And then it goes to Finance Committee and then to City Council. And I think there might actually be another City Council meeting in there somewhere, but that's generally the process.
I wanted to ask our council liaison a question. So one of the mandates of the commission is for us to recommend action to council. And I know that these projects are of particular interest to this commission. You know, we had 15, 20 parents come out during our retreat. And our commission hasn't historically weighed in on budget issues, at least as far as I'm aware. So if the commission wanted to really put its full weight and recommendation or endorsement behind these 3 CIP items and potentially the therapeutic specialist position, if it was, however it's configured,
Propose it.
if we wanted to provide that recommendation and maybe even discuss it at a meeting so that members of the public could come and provide testimony that we could include in a recommendation, I'm wondering if you had any specific recommendations for how we should do that in the most effective way so that we can provide our advice as an advisory body to the council, to the finance committee, that these items are important and are needed, and that we've been hearing from parents and families in the community about the need for them. I'm wondering if you had any suggestions there.
So at this time, a lot of the boards and commissions they're submitting their reports to council. So one of the ways that you could do it is submit a report in a letter form through staff members and submit it to council for us to,
Okay.
it's a report.
A report, okay.
And then you can also put in there your recommendation. Highly recommend, and it's through the chair.
So on the calendar, so if we had a meeting where we discussed it and authorized the committee to put together like a letter or a report and then brought it back to the commission for adoption, when would we need to do that by? Would we need to do the first step in January and come back in February as a commission to formally sort of endorse the letter that's been drafted? Is that the process, if I'm looking at the calendar correctly, or do we have
So
more time than
the
that?
council members aren't going to see it until it's presented to the finance committee, and
Okay,
that's
in
just at the
April, May.
committee level
Okay.
in April. I mean, planning will see it in April and May, but I'm not sure
Okay.
if all the council will.
So we have a little bit of
Look at
time
it.
to
You do
put
have a
together
little
a
bit of
report.
time.
Okay.
Yes.
I want to recognize Commissioner Stinger. Go right ahead, please.
I just wanted to comment that we have in the past gone to the Finance Committee with support for recommendations, and we can do that again.
What was that process like at the commission level prior to going to finance?
Let me think for a second. The issues were related to HISRAP
HISRAP,
and the
yeah.
emergency fund and increasing levels of funding for emerging needs and emergency needs. And we spoke to that examples of needs. So we did a situation analysis, some options, and a recommendation.
If I could just ask, in the proposal for projects, I imagine that there's outreach there to community service providers and other folks to identify things that would impact needs that are in the community. What is that project outreach like? How does that come about?
Well, for parks and recreation projects, we have a parks master plan. It's actually Parks, Recreation, Open Space and Trails master plan that was adopted by council in September of 2017. And there was significant public outreach in to develop that plan. And so that's really our document that we go by as we're looking at potential projects. There's also, a lot of our projects are required because we just know that a certain piece of equipment has reached the end of its useful functioning life, and we need to repair it for it to be safe. Or we know of, trails or something that have been washed out. And so there's, some of it is need that we just know, our staff knows, and some of it is based on, like the Parks Master Plan, for example.
Was the Wincanata CIP, was that something that was contemplated by the 2017 master plan? Or is that sort of a more recent development, so to speak?
The master plan doesn't specifically call out Rinconada. You mean the playground specifically?
No, I mean the pool.
Oh, the
The
pool.
pool.
The master plan doesn't call out anything specific, but it does have a policy in there to meet and exceed ADA standards.
Gotcha.
Is there anything you would like to convey to us now as a sum of your experience so far, and also, your presentation when you put it together? What were your thoughts about how we've been doing?
Good. So, I appreciate the support and, just pushing us along to make sure that we're, moving the needle on this. Like I said, it's not going to be, we're not going to get everything done immediately. It is a process, but, it is helpful to hear where we can improve. So, yeah, and I'm happy to come back, at a certain time. I don't know when that time would be, but happy to do that to provide more updates.
There's some amazing people in the camps, in the theaters, the JMZ, I have 2 young children here, and those have just been fantastic playgrounds for them. And so I think it's a real tribute. If we can open that up to everyone, I think it's a great idea. Anyone else have any comments or thoughts before we close?
I have two comments.
Okay.
The first one would be, again, back to the ratio concept. To the extent that that is fleshed out enough, I would encourage the department to consider, requesting additional funds from council for that, perhaps exploring like a pilot program to expand the ratios in one of the programs, or an additional program other than the Children's Theater, the JMZ that did the...
The magical
Aids?
series? Oh, no, it was the Children's Theater.
Yeah, so I would recommend, I personally would suggest that it would be great to pilot perhaps an additional aid program at maybe an additional program. And if you're able to submit that as part of this next budget cycle, I think that would be something I would personally support.
Okay.
The second thought is more for the commission, and I think we'll probably talk about it more when we get to agenda setting, but I'd like to make sure that we properly plan out our schedule for the first couple of months of 2020 to ensure that we have time to take action in terms of whether it's forming a committee or empowering the existing committee of Commissioner Regier and myself to draft a proposed letter of support or report of support for these initiatives for the full commission's consideration and endorsement, so that we could send that as part of this process. So I want to make sure that we don't miss the boat on lending our support to these 3 initiatives, as well as any other initiatives we want the council to consider as part of this next budget cycle. Commissioner Stinger mentioned his RAP in the past, and I know this year we expanded the emerging needs fund criteria, and we have seen that it's been finally oversubscribed as opposed to undersubscribed, and so that might be an opportunity for us to discuss whether we want to ask for an increase there, or to any of the other pools of money that this commission makes recommendations on.
Commissioner Regier?
I just want to say thank you, Kristen, because just seeing what you've done with, and because Commissioner Lee and I had visited other cities, and to see that they have a staff just devoted to this, and to see how much you've done in this time period, I just want to say thank you so much, because I know you're kind of short-staffed in a lot of So, thank you.
Yeah, thank you.
Well, thanks so much for coming and giving us the presentation. We're going to move on to reports from officials, the commissioner reports. I'll just start on this side of the table, and we'll move around. So, Commissioner Savage.
Just for nothing in the past, but for the future, we have a meeting set up with the Palo Alto Police Chief for mid-December. It would be Commissioner Lee, Commissioner Smith, and myself. So we'll report back next month on the results.
Thank you for arranging that meeting. I have nothing to report at this time. Commissioner Lee.
I think the only updates I have is, I've been following the work that the city has been doing on vaping, and so I want to thank our council liaison and staff for diligently working on that, and, I think the community was very excited to see the progress that was made. Was it just this past Monday, or this past Monday? And so, I don't know to what extent this commission helped move things along, but, very glad that the community is moving forward with a multi-pronged approach there, and hopefully this commission will continue to be involved. I think there's a breakfast that's tentatively scheduled in January, so I hope as many of us can attend that as possible. So I want to say thank you on that note.
I was worried about the passion that I displayed during a council meeting, and I happened to be watching C-SPAN this week, and in C-SPAN, Representative Ramamurthy, who is the oversight chair in the House, was grilling the FDA liaison. And I have to say that my passion was maybe a fraction of that, because, it's a difficult problem when the federal gatekeepers have not really responded, and that pushes it down on the local governments. And I also like to say that I think that the speed in which the city has acted on our recommendation is really, really, heartfelt. I think it was great. It was fantastic. You always wonder if you express a little passion, if someone will take you up on that or throw it right back at you. But I highly recommend reviewing that C-SPAN tape, because it's just an amazing thing. They cited statistics, annual statistics of middle school vaping that had increased 200% in the last year, and high school vaping that had increased 100% within the last year. So thank you, council member, for your efforts, and the other council members for taking action. I think that's a difficult thing to bring yourself into a public health sphere. From our perspective, it was a issue of children in our community that needed your support. Thank you for doing that. Okay, Commissioner Regier.
A couple of things is, Commissioner Lee and I met with Dr. Enoch Choi, and he's working with a lot of homeless and mental health issues in health, and we met with him last week about because that was one of our issues, mental health, and we've met with him, and we're just kind of getting thoughts together on that one. And then next week, I'm going to be on a conference call with the United Nations UNICEF person that's in charge of the Kids Friendly, to see how we can get that going on, and because that was one of my things. And then I also, global warming and global emergencies was also one of my issues, and I went to the Menlo Park's council meeting and watched what they're doing, and just seeing what groups they're doing, and it's interesting because they have a commission called Environmental Quality Commission, and that's what they deal with and that's on that front what I'm kind of working on, and then next week I have a Palo Alto, the school district has a sustainability program that they work with the communities in the schools about sustainability, and so I'm going to that meeting, and that's about it.
Is Stephen your driver to all these meetings, or what?
Well, I drive myself. I'm liberated.
That's,
I could-
okay. You must get good parking at all the locations. You work very active. Congratulations on that, and thank you. Thank you
You're
for doing all
welcome.
that work. It's really important. You went to Chicago,
I went to the Chicago for the bullying,
bullying.
not bowling, bullying, and that was very interesting because that school district, which is a third in the country, they have a committee in the school district that is just, it's interfaith, which is interesting when you think it's a school district with interfaith, and they work with places of worship with the school communities. Like if someone's homeless, they work with the churches. If someone dies, because that's an expensive thing. So they really take care of the school district, that area, but it's an interfaith, which I thought was really interesting. That
Well, you're bringing national good practice standards to us, and we really appreciate
Oh,
that.
and the other thing that I did too at the bullying conference is that Lady Gaga, because she was bullied a lot when she was young, so she started a foundation called Kindness. It's a kindness thing, and they're looking for cities that will take on a 20-day kindness project. And they were saying how remarkable it is. Like this one man would be, like one suggestion was one man just said, okay, he had a really high beating his wife, and he took the pledge, and it just changed that whole. I mean, they worked with him, and so they're interested in having us do something like that in our city.
Thank you so much.
You're welcome.
Commissioner Stinger, we're very happy to have you back.
Thank you, I'm happy to be back. So I did a couple of things at the end of the month. Tuesday was the County Board of Supervisors meeting, and there were 3 agenda items related to LGBTQ affairs. One was just a report, one was a report on the status of their work to get health facilities built, and that was in much detail, and much progress made on that. And there was encouragement from the Board of Supervisors. The work plan was accepted, and there was much encouragement to get going, and that was nice to hear. There was also an agenda item to approve the senior center at Avenidas. And there was some nice backgrounding of the work that we had done in the summits to initiate some of that, to facilitate that meeting of the minds and the proposal. So they approved $300,000 for a pilot program over 2 years. And we did get some nice credit from Supervisor Simidian for stoking that, and that was nice to hear. And then finally, they are giving approval to a senior survey, a survey of senior LGBTQ needs. So that was the one thing I felt was a big success, and I was very pleased with that.
I think it was a huge success. I will say that being a new member of the commission, having watched you and Commissioner Lee engage in that process and holding the summits, the follow-up summits, it serves as a very good model of how to get things done. I think you brought in not only the city resources through staff, but also the county resources, and you were able to propose things. You also kind of, when you think of a catalyst, you catalyzed a lot of people to bring their ideas forward. And I remember all the little yellow stickies that you came up with and the notes that you brought into the commission. But it was a great process, and much like the process that we saw tonight with the little boxes, I think it would be really worthwhile to add that kind of process to the things that we do. You know, our initiatives, when we start out, sometimes it's, amazing how complex problems are. And when you have all the stakeholders, I know you're trying to do that right now with the vaping, along with Commissioner Savage, so we appreciate that model.
Thank you. That's nice. I appreciate that feedback. And I think it really is an expression of what a group of people can do when you just let them go at it. The creativity that came out of that group, the creativity at Avenidas right now is daunting. And Commissioner or Supervisor Simidian, Chair Simidian commented on that. And the other point that he made was, he kind of was stoking the fires. He said, be opportunistic. It just happened that I was there at the right time and at the right place, and I could facilitate this funding for a pilot program. And it wasn't necessarily a strategic plan or lots of thought, it just happened. And he said, in this case, that's good. We know we need it. And so it was.
Well, thank you
It
for
was pretty
bringing
high.
that success back.
Yeah,
It's like 3 trophies.
There was a couple other things. So that happened to be Human Rights Day, and Minka had shared with us that the flag was going to be raised at a ceremony at noontime.
Right, that was part of that commission. They had the flag ceremony. That's the County Commission on Human Relations, which is now Human Rights Commission, right?
They are Human Rights Commission.
They've moved to that model.
So I brought these back to share.
Thank you very much.
And talking about the Healthy Cities initiative on vaping, we met and we are proceeding with a breakfast on January 23rd. And the model will be much the same as we've done before, to bring stakeholders together to meet our vision of a community that is as a safe environment that allows and empowers students to make the right choices. And we want to.
Do you have a time for that yet?
It'll be breakfast at 8, programming at 8:30 to 10:30.
Okay, Councilmember Koo.
So, yes, last Monday on the 9th, we did, council did pass the vaping ordinance.
Fantastic,
So,
thank you.
Thank you very much for all your support. It actually was quite a long road. It's actually a 2-year road. I've been working with the Palo Alto Youth Council for 2 years now, and they actually, through a study session, kind of brought forward to the city officials about the issues at their schools where there is a lot of vaping, and where the bathrooms were always constantly being smoky and sets off the alarm for the fire alarms. And so they did a survey which kind of brought forth the numbers and how prevalent it was in our community. And so through them, I've been trying to get them to focus on policy and suggesting a draft ordinance so that they can help us. And it was an engagement thing, and I thought, with the youth council being involved and youth to youth, it would be very powerful. But nonetheless, it's a problem in our community, and so I'm very, very happy that the 3 council members, through a colleague's memo, brought it forward. And so now the Youth Commission, they're going to be working on more things to see how can they get the message out through education, that sort of, in that manner.
Wanted to ask you on that. So I know that the motion that was passed on Monday said that staff would come back to council after the January breakfast with funding recommendations, I think primarily education related, but I think funding generally speaking. Do you think at that point, after the breakfast, it would be appropriate for this commission to re-engage in the process, either to lend our support to staff recommendation or any nuance, any differences we might have, any nuances to that?
I think that at this point, staff actually have a lot of connections, and they're also being referred by our county connections. And so at this point, I would say, let staff do the connections first and to vet it all out, because we just passed this ordinance. So as soon as staff have a better understanding of how to proceed, I'm sure staff will bring it back to, they can bring it back here or whichever committee there is.
Would it be your hope that this commission be able to weigh in on the staff recommendation before it comes back to council?
Absolutely.
Especially if there's a
I mean,
HVAC
It would be a good
component, yeah.
idea, to have your involvement as well.
Right, appreciate it,
right?
yeah.
And I think, the youth council is going to be very interested
Mm.
also. So there's quite a number of committees that would be interested in advancing this. The City Schools Liaison Committee is also going to be involved also. This is where we have a connection of giving updates to the school side. So we have 2 Board of Trustee members that sits on that, and we update them on these kind of things, and also ask for their contributions to how we might step forward and do more.
I mean, I'm very thankful for your work with the youth council. I mean, for me, it on so many different levels, it's very special because, like, the youth council was actually formed by this commission, 30 years ago and spun off. And I myself started out on a youth council in San Jose. And so it's great to see youth councils doing more than just programming, but really getting involved in the issues and policy. And so
And the
Thank you for
youth
that.
council, oh, you're very
Yeah.
welcome. The teens do most of it, so I'm just there to learn from them and also to give guidance if they need any. But it's a group that is led by themselves, so they're great. As a matter of fact, tonight is the last night. They actually put together an event because mental health is one of their priorities. They've actually put together a series of gosh, the name is very long. It's called Study Cram.
It's a cram slam.
Cram Slam Study. But it's 3 nights long, and it's to help their peers to have a nice place to come and study and take some stress off, where they can go and play with dogs, animals. And then another night it was making stress balls. And then I forget what tonight is. But, I went yesterday, and there's about 83 kids there. The night before, there was also around between 70 and 80. I haven't gotten the count tonight yet, so it's quite a large group. So they're doing a lot of good things to help their peers. Let me see here. Also, we finally managed to pass our urgency ordinance in order to close up some loopholes that may have come out through the Assembly Bill 1483. It takes effect in January 1, 2020. However, without this ordinance, evictions could take place and it could go to court. So the ordinance actually applies to tenancies where the tenant remains in possession of their home, and the eviction lawsuit if it has not gone to court yet. So it helps them through that process. And that was the most important, especially with the holidays coming up. We certainly don't want them to be stressed out looking for something else or out without a home. Besides that, I think that's...
Are there any updates on the safe parking?
Oh, thank you very much for bringing that up. Safe Parking Council has sent it to Policy and Services. So it did come through Policy and Services, but the only thing that we were able to push through was the what they call Tier 1. There are certain churches, some of the churches have actually self-identified and volunteered and are willing to have RVs or vehicles in their parking lots. And we don't have an ordinance to say how many, but at this point, the churches are all willing to take up to 4 vehicles. However, so Policy and Services have said okay to that and is recommending it to council. So it's going to come back probably sometime in January to council for that first tier. The rest of the tiers, we're still working through it. It's still going to have to come back to Policy and Services to work out. And I would love for your advocacy on the tiers.
That's why I would love to be part of that, because I've already talked to some ministers that are wanting to do that. And quite a few of the ones that do the Hotels Inc., they're a little bit more willing to.
Well, the main thing is to ensure that there is enough communication, and we don't want to put the church in a difficult position with their neighbors. So it's something that we're trying to see how they would conduct their outreach.
Is there any thought on that one? Or at some point, can you come and give it a talk? I mean, more on that at some point, or
More on,
on the safe parking? Or could we have a subcommittee or something that we would meet with you, you know what I mean, to work with you on, because
I can come and give a briefing so everybody knows about what we're trying to do, but, you know, the other two items are still going through the process with policy and services, so I could give you an update on, to see where that is. I might have to ask staff to help me with that.
Because I was wondering, because one of the things that I've heard is that sometimes there's different needs if it's families or if it's just women, and a lot of women find that being in their car would rather have a group where just women parking together.
And you know,
Particular, and I was wondering if
see, the city is gonna, what we're doing is, we're actually gonna be working through I don't know if I want to say contractor, but there are the groups out, organizations out there who have experience in this line of work, and they have already received funding through county or through whichever other organizations that they do get it. And so we would be contracting with them to do that. And if it's something that you want to learn more about how they do it, I can certainly try to see if we can get those organizations to help answer some questions or provide a little bit more view of what they do.
Because one idea that I was thinking is that to have, instead of when we hold meetings, to have maybe one on just housing, for example, and we could just have different people. I mean, we had it sort of, but like now Catholic Charities are working at Avenidas to match people with homes and rooms with, and I'm just having a whole variety of what our community does to offer, and that could be one component. You know, like we could have that, and like a study session, sort of, like what our community offers.
I think on that, it's something maybe the HRC would want to kind of discuss through your retreat and set up a of what you want to see with Mary and Minka, and then through that, have these.
Match it with you know, some of the initiatives that we have in our work plan, and find the support, and then discuss with staff what the topic would be, and how to, you know, begin the process, the different boxes of discussion, education, et cetera. So that's good. That's wonderful news. I just want to say that it wasn't lost on me that you've been working on vaping for quite some time, and I appreciate that. Other council members have said that, and it's wonderful that we were not speaking in a vacuum. So that's a major change that will benefit our kids, and we really appreciate what you're doing. Thank you. Staff liaison report from Mary Constantino. You have something?
I would just wanted to add a comment, if I could, and it was respond, in
Please.
thought to the vaping starting in 2000, your initiative started in 2016, or 2 years.
It was just basically bringing it to the attention of the youth, and as another item for them to consider whether they wanted to take it on or not. And they very enthusiastically took it on. Yeah.
The thought process I went through was our work with the LGBTQ community has years of history. Sometimes it takes a while to get to a result. And the other comment I wanted to make was I was a judge today for civics projects at a program called Generation Citizen. And it was mostly 7th graders, and some of their vaping proposals were so sophisticated that I have no reservations about leaving our solutions to the youth council.
Great.
They were brilliant. They weren't just cute. They were brilliant.
Mary, we're so pleased that you're going to provide tonight's staff liaison report.
I just have one thing to talk about was we have the
holidays coming up, and so Minko will be on vacation. I'll be on vacation from the 23rd all the way until the 6th, and then we'll be coming back, and that day we have to post the agenda. So what we'll be hearing tonight, we'll be working on that, but if there's anything else to add, let us know ASAP. I mean, we'll be here next week, but normally I do it on that Friday before, but we'll be doing it on that Monday, which is still 72 hours. So that's just all I have to add.
And I guess I meant, we had a change with Commissioner Shu leaving us last month.
Yeah, so normally in January we do elections, so
Oh, please think about that. It's been my privilege to be the chair, and this is a privilege that should be shared to others. And it is really, in some sense, one of those things where I think you learn by doing. We have, including myself, we'll have 3 former chairs. So I would highly encourage those who have not served as chair to think about becoming a chair, because I think that would be something that would allow you to see a little bit more about agendizing things, working with staff, gaining confidence in the good faith of your fellow commission members. So tentative agenda for the next regular meeting. Go ahead.
Oh, I was wondering about sending a letter to replace the other commissioner, if that's been, do you know if that was sent to our city manager requesting that the city council?
I think the city manager is fully aware and cognizant of the resignation of Commissioner Shu. And
So did we ask him to report it back to the city
there
council?
is a process.
No, that is the process. I was wondering, did we ask?
Is beginning, and
Okay.
it will begin and lead to recruitment. There are 2 vacancies on our commission next May. So that will also be part of what their thinking is.
Oh, so is the current thinking that they're going to wait until,
I don't know
The
what
other
their
2
current
seats
thinking
open?
is, but as soon as I have it,
Okay.
I think staff will report that to you.
They have waited in the past, so, I would imagine that's what they're going to do, but the clerk's office is the one that handles that.
they just went through a series of recruitment, right? Do you have excuse me, do you have a particular preference, whether they wait to fill the vacancy until the other 2 seats come up, or to do it in the interim? I know you do it in batches.
I mean, this is something that the clerk's office handles, so I leave it for them to take care, to handle it.
Because I've heard that they could draw from past applicants. It's just a matter of whether council wants to interview
They're not
just one
going to do
person.
that.
They're not going to do that.
That I've
Okay.
asked. I've
Okay.
asked that already.
Okay.
They're going to do a whole new recruitment. And it
I'd like
seems
to add
make
one more
sense.
thing for next month, the election. I'd like to know, if all the I'd like to have all the commissioners present. And if anybody knows right now they're not going to be there, you're not going to be there. So I'd like to let the election slide until February, when everybody is here.
Well, I mean, that's something to consider, but I do think, one absence is not bad.
Well, we don't know if it's one absence or more.
There are ways in which we can also get a vote. So let's explore that. I'd like to keep it to January.
That's preferable, but, well, yeah.
I take it your interest, as a mediator, your interest is in having all members of our commission vote.
That would be nice.
Okay. All right, I
The-
think that's fine.
The point of that is that if the person cannot be nominated and voted if they're not present. So, according to our handbook, so let's say
Well,
somebody.
we can ask Valerie, are you interested in running?
No, but that person has to be present at the.
Yeah, but
vote.
we can ask her. She's the only absence that we have right now. Is there an issue that you might be running for chair next time around? Okay. So I think as long as we can get the vote, I think we'll be in good shape.
If I could add something, Chair, I do know that the vote would need to be unanimous by, I
It's usually
believe that's what, because you'd have,
unanimous if we're going to,
because you'd have a reduced number of commissioners present for the chair and vice chair.
okay, education on that is much appreciated.
Well, I think we need 4 votes. For
I
any
believe
action.
Minka said there would only be 4 people here.
That's, I think there was
Because we're down to 6, and then 5.
But I believe Minka said there would only be 4 people
Okay, so
here
someone else might be
in
absent.
January, so maybe Commissioner Smith won't be here as well, and in which case you would need a unanimous
then that
vote,
would-
so.
yeah.
Yeah, it's just something to consider.
For other agenda items, I'd like to request that we add I would guess that there's sort of a 75% chance that we could weigh in on the Tier 1 safe parking. I mean, I doubt council will see it on the 6th. 6th they might. If not, then we have, like, our meeting is timed such that we could endorse it before the 13th or 20th, or maybe they'll see it in February. The safe parking Tier 1 program that Policy and Services is referring to council. So if we could have a presentation on that and action so that the commission could consider endorsing it.
Yeah, I mean, I think some of this you have to do in scheduling, and the safe parking, is that, on the agenda in terms of our initiatives?
It's under homelessness, so it's under the homelessness work plan.
Okay, and so who was your second on that? Is that Commissioner Regier?
Commissioner Regier.
Okay, and so I think at that point, it's up to you guys to work with staff to try to line up the
Okay.
speaker.
Okay.
Okay?
Okay. The
That's
other one
fine.
would be again, this is also on the work plan, would be for the endorsing the CIPs, and that would be Commissioner Regier and myself for the Parks and Rec item on our work plan.
Okay, same
Yeah, yeah,
process.
same process.
Same.
Just giving you a heads up, just so that staff
Sure.
knows that those are the two
Right.
items.
Are you saying for January?
The Tier 1 would be needed to be done in January. The CIP one, we could conceivably do in February.
Right,
Okay.
because it won't be, it's not going to be ready in January, the CIPs.
All
They're
right.
still
Any
being
other
worked.
ones, Commissioner?
So when would a draft CIP be like? When would be the best time for us to like endorse a CIP?
When it goes to the Finance Committee.
And so that would be in
Like April.
Okay.
Commissioner
So
Stinger has her light on.
March, probably.
I had a question. There's not much time between the 6th and the 10th. Could we consider having the HRC on the 3rd Thursday?
Would you be able to make it then?
I mean, that would probably require a vote in the next couple of days. But I
Can the
just-
vote be taken by poll on electronic means? Like we did with,
Yeah, that's what we've done in the past.
That
so-
would be great. Okay, let's do that.
Well, would you have to work to see if the AV people are available? That's their,
I'll have to check on that, too.
And the room.
Yeah, the room, and there's a lot of logistics about changing it, but we'll work on it.
That has not been successful in the past.
I would also like your agenda, this is not on the work plan, agenda as a discussion on downtown streets team. I think we are all aware of the press item that came out the other day, and so I think it's important for us to discuss.
Well,
Discuss it during-
let me just say that at the present time, staff is pursuing follow-up on that. I got an email from staff about,
From Kristen.
right, about doing follow-up, and I think that's the key aspect. Staff needs to be prepared on the issue. And so what I would recommend is that we first hear first from staff, the feedback. The other thing I would say about this issue is that, one of the things you did is you forwarded the issue to council. And there's a certain respect that we have to give to council on that. If it's their preference to agendize the item by sending the matter up, now council is involved. So I want to take some counsel from staff about, how we should be reacting to staff input. Because once the staff follows up and gives the input, it's going to be giving the input to not only our commission, but also to members of council. And, you know, by sending the article, of course, it's a public article, I think it's really a preference of staff, of the city council, you know, how they, if they want to agendize it. So what we don't want to do is we don't want to be in the way. And so what I would propose is that I anticipate that there will be seconds if we want to bring that item up, but I'd like to hear back from staff first, if that's okay. Do you anticipate that you'll hear back in the next couple weeks before the January 6th agenda? I imagine so.
I don't know. I mean, it's really, you know, it's a sensitive matter. It involves personnel issues. It involves contracts. That is all things that our city attorney's office is looking into.
Yeah, and I
the
don't think
city
we want to get in the
manager's
way.
office,
Once
so-
the
right.
city steps in, I think we have to be,
Yeah.
we have to show deference to our superiors on that one, and I think
Or to be clear,
what we can do.
staff is not, I mean, we work together, right?
No, what I'm saying is that the city council and the city's attorney's office is handling this very sensitive matter, and we need to show deference. And if there is a role for us to play in that, I think that we will, you know, follow input from staff. They've taken the lead on that. Go ahead, please.
Chair, and HRC commissioners. So, the mayor has been in contact with the Board of Director Chair, Mr. Owen Bird. And so, they are in communication, and they're working it through. And as Kristen and the chair had said, there is personnel involved in this, and we have to be very cognizant of that and respectful of it as well. If we don't know what kind of legal concerns there are on the other side, and we certainly don't want to get involved and do any, cause any issues. But there is discussion going on between the mayor and the organization, and also with the attorneys. So with the city attorney involved as well as staff. So at this time, I'm just going to ask that we let our city official, the mayor, and staff handle it.
I think you
until-
got to show deference in a
And-
very sensitive situation like this. I
Right.
agree 100%.
I don't
Any other
think,
thoughts from the?
Well,
I just hope
want
we get a timely update. I mean, I don't want this 6 months to pass and the item has been dropped or we haven't been.
Well, that's the
informed.
thing. You just got a
I mean,
timely update. The mayor is.
Yeah, I mean, so I appreciate that update. I mean, my concern again is that the city has budgeted $500,000 for this organization. A big piece of that has come from recommendations that this commission has made.
I feel
So
your sensitivity,
I'm
right?
fine with waiting.
Yeah, you're sensitive because
action?
you voted in favor of funding an organization. And the bad press has come out and you're sensitive.
As long as someone's
so we
working
got
on it, it's fine.
If the mayor is working on it, I think we've got our message to Garcia.
Okay,
So I
okay,
think
great.
we've got it.
So are we done with this agenda item?
And if you have another agenda
Oh,
item, go right
I
ahead.
didn't have any agenda.
To make
Okay.
one comment, that I think
Okay.
our timing also needs to be cognizant of the holiday. There's not much that can happen. I mean, we don't have 4 weeks between now and the next HRC meeting. It's maybe 5 work days.
Right, right. And on this meeting, Abigail's finished her math homework, so pretty soon either I'm going to have a heavy bill at Baskin Robbins or it's going to,
I wanted to, as an agenda item, 2 things. One is I thought that we should talk about process, because I think just as an organization, like process, like who, like cleaning, not cleaning up our house, but I think that we should discuss how, maybe you could, process. I mean, I think,
there's a couple things. One of the things about process is there is an initiative on processes at our commission, and it's led by Commissioner Stinger and Commissioner Savage. So what I would say to you is, if you would like to do that idea, I would have that discussion with them. And anything that you, Commissioner Savage or Commissioner Stinger, raise as part of your initiatives,
What committee is this?
Yep.
it's
Yeah.
in the work plan.
Well, let me just, no, let me just say is that I think that it's very clear, the roles of different parts in our handbook, and I think that maybe I should drop it, but I just think before we vote on a new chair and vote on a new, we should go over what those responsibilities are and have a discussion on that, not a
I'm happy
voting.
to sit with you and staff and do that. I think, but I'm pretty sure that there is a initiative on process.
There's a whole initiative, I mean, in our handbook, there's
No,
about.
I'm talking about our work plan.
Okay, well, then I'll drop that one since it's
Okay,
not.
Yeah,
But the other thing that's happening is our, I was approached from the League of Women Voters, and she's concerned that a lot of people in our area doesn't know that we're not being able to vote by mail. It's going to be all, we're not having voting polls. We're
okay,
not-
is there a work plan item on voting? I thought there was a get out the vote something or other.
That was the census.
Census count.
Okay. So we didn't have anything on voting?
No.
Okay, so we have to change the work plan if we're gonna add that.
Well, to be clear, we didn't have anything on vaping either,
No, we
so,
did.
did we? Okay.
Oh, yeah,
So,
it's
okay,
very
we'll just skip
specific.
that. She just wanted to come speak on letting the community know about the rights of voting and
We're
voting.
open to that, and
Mm-hmm.
I think what we'll do is we'll try to see if staff can connect the person in a timely manner. It might not be January.
Well, our voting isn't our, when is it? Isn't it our, yeah, we vote in March,
Okay, so it won't be January, but it might be February.
that'd be fine. I just thought I'd throw it out that I was approached, because she just thought it'd be important for people to know that our election is up.
Okay, thank you.
So if it's March, and we have to have a meeting and then we vote the next meeting, right? Isn't that what?
Well, it depends, and, I mean, I'm not sure what we're voting on. but-
Because March is Mental Health Month, and I'd like to have a plan on what we're going to do
Okay.
as a group, and.
I know you're on a mental health initiative,
So,
and that, what we can do there is we can work with staff to agendize something on a calendar basis. So the work plan, I think, governs this, and I think we'll be okay.
so I'd like that on, so we could discuss what we're going to do about Mental Health Month.
Okay.
Is that clear? Gabe?
I think we can. We might not want to, yeah, I'm not sure we want to agendize it, or we want to meet with staff. I think it would be better to meet with staff. in a
But we can't
subcommittee.
vote on, we need to vote, I'd like to vote on what the.
You don't
plan-
need to vote to bring an agenda item up. You just need 2 people.
What I'm saying is I'd like it on the agenda in January, to have a plan, right. So you're.
Yeah, it could be February. We have the elections in January. We got a lot of things going on here.
That's leadership's call when.
Yeah, I think I would do it more timely to, to the election itself. But guess what? I won't be in leadership at that time. And I'm hoping that someone else might be, who has not done that, and that might help you move that along. But you have something, Commissioner Stinger.
Yeah, if we meet the third week in January, I'd like to talk about our schedule for retreats and how that dovetails with the election of officers.
Right, yeah, to make it more consonant with the election of officers, I agree. Okay, I can second that one. I think that's part of the process, one. We're focused on item 7, which is adjournment. Without any objection, we'll adjourn the meeting at 8:24. Thank you so much, guys.
Oh, I did?